Okay, I'm going to start by introducing a trade unionist, David Chappell.
I thought it was important for a few reasons that I'll try and explain why a lifelong trade unionist. I was a militant in the Royal Mail for 38 years, Communication Workers Union, a walking postman for 38 years, and why I think it's important that a trade unionist speaks. Thanks to Jane, thanks to the Bath Campaign Networks for inviting me, is because there are all sorts of serious questions that the trade union movement in this country has to answer before it gets to a decent moral and industrial stance on Gaza. But before that, I'm representing Mendip Trade Union Council, and this occasion is the first public appearance of our magnificent new banner over there to the left, which represents a tradition which many of you here will have no idea about, but basically for the last 300 years the militant coal miners of Radstock, whenever they had a grievance, would threaten to march on the glorious Ralph Allen city of Bath, cause havoc, and usually got what they wanted, and this was all pre-trade union. So we're hoping to resurrect that riotous march on Bath, even if there's only a few of us today. Many of you may not know that there are two Elbit workplaces in North Bristol, one at Aztec West and one at Filton, and the Aztec West premises is owned by Somerset County Council. And a little bit of good news, thanks to the reasonably left-wing Labour group on Somerset County Council, which has a massive majority of Lib Dems, they voted on Tuesday to immediately start legal eviction procedures on their Elbit premises in Aztec West. I was actually pretty surprised at the verdict because just about all the Lib Dems voted for it. I'm not sure how long I can remember when the Lib Dems actually voted with any sense of moral conscience, and even a few Tories voted for it. But the leader of the Tories said businesses should be able to produce what they want, which kind of sort of sums up not just Toryism, but where a hell of a lot of people who are implicit in the genocide in Gaza are coming from. There's money in it for them. Now, so far as Elbit is concerned, so far as British Aerospace is concerned, so far as Leonardo is concerned, so far as Rolls-Royce is concerned, so far as Elbit, by the way, has no trade union members that we know of. That doesn't make it great, but it means it's very, very hard even to approach. But that's not the case of Leonardo in Yeovil. That's not the case of Rolls-Royce and British Aerospace and other large firms which are very, very well unionised. So what is the state of play between trade unionists like myself who want to stand outside the gates, not to actually say personally, you're murderers to the workers there earning a living for their families, but to start a dialogue? And what I'm ashamed of is that dialogue's not happening at the moment, in terms of some unions seem to be happier attacking trade union members who want to actually peacefully protest outside these arms factories, which are complicit in the genocide in Gaza, wanting to talk to the workers, and it's almost if people like us, people like those, are pariahs. What should be happening at the very least is that those trade unions, and some of these factories have 90% trade union density, should be having workplace meetings, should be having dinner time meetings, should be having before and after shift meetings where they go out and talk to you and go out and talk to me and actually say, well, I don't effing want to make arms for Israel, but what can I do? I've got to feed my family. That's a start, and that dialogue's not happening at the moment, and I call upon the TUC to start that dialogue before things get worse and the workers are accused of being child murderers, which we don't want. Couple of other things. In terms of where the TUC is, the Trade Union Congress, which I'm certainly not representing, I'm representing some pretty decent local trade unionists on Mendip Trade Union Council. The TUC is going backwards. Because 5 years ago, thanks to the Trades Council movement, the Trade Union Congress, echoing back to the Lucas Aerospace experiment and the Upper Clyde shipbuilders and some of the better aspects of British trade union history, passed a motion calling for a just transition to a green economy and an economy where arms, and certainly nuclear arms, was absolutely eliminated or minimised. And that was passed. Do you know what happened last year? Things are going backwards. Thanks to some of the big battalions in the unions, the TUC now has an official policy of expanding the British economy by massive expenditure on arms. That's the TUC official policy. Not my policy. It's not your policy. It's not the policy of any individual decent trade unionist. But that's where we are. But in terms of trying to move towards finishing on a bright note, the Scottish TUC is totally different. Now, the Scottish TUC has a lot of trade unionists like me on it. Trade Union Council, local militants are allowed on the Scottish TUC. A guy called Mike Arnott from Dundee chairs it. And do you know what? The Scottish TUC have put two fingers up to the TUC, and they've just passed a motion calling for a reduction in arms expenditure and for a just economy to a green economy. So farewell to the Scottish TUC. And finally, I don't want to overstay my welcome. Hopefully you'll be seeing our magnificent new Mendip Trade Union Council banner in many, many protests and perhaps the odd riot in Bath in the years to come. But I want to tell you what inspired me in the last 6 months. Is I went to one of the strikes that took place in Amazon in Coventry, a huge Amazon warehouse where about 8,000 workers, overwhelmingly not of British origin, overwhelmingly young, overwhelmingly non-white, or in political terms, as I still like to call it, black. And that was an inspiring picket. To start off with, they picketed. They didn't just politely, like some middle-class trade unionists, stand on the side of the road, "Oh, please give us a pay rise." They stopped everything. They stopped every lorry, and there were 250 pickets. You're only supposed legally to have 6. And you know what inspired me at the end? It wasn't just the militancy. And by the way, in a world's first, those workers have just won a statutory legal right to have a ballot on union recognition, which will be the first Amazon plant in the world to be unionised. That's the GMB in Coventry. But I'll tell you what inspired me more than any of that was this young lad. He couldn't have been more than 16, 17, and he was one of the leading pickets. You know what I did? In the end, because he'd already spoken, he'd already given it that, you know, two fingers up to Amazon. The whole thing was drifting apart, and he grabbed the megaphone and he rushed to the start just as the rally was dispersing, and he said, "This is the strike picket line," right? A rally at the end, 300 strong. And he said, "Aren't we forgetting something? We're not just here to strike at Amazon. Free Palestine, free Gaza. That's the sort of trade unionism that I want."
Free, free!
Palestine!
Free, free!
Palestine!
Free, free!
Palestine!
Free, free!
Palestine!
One more time. Free, free!
Palestine!
Thank you, Dave. Very inspiring speech. I'm going to now introduce Amira. Amira is a student. She's Palestinian heritage and a wonderful speaker. And yeah, I'll just hand over to Amira.
In the last 6 months of war in Gaza, I've seen things I never thought I'd see and heard stories I never thought I'd hear. The footage we've seen coming out of Gaza is simply unimaginable. But it's real, and every painful picture tells a very painful story. We will never forget the erasure of our people. Entire families wiped out of existence. Decades of years, moments, memories eradicated in the blink of an eye. We will never forget the cries of our children, buried beneath the rubble, crushed beneath the weight of their homes as the world came tumbling down on them. We will never forget the skeletons of our premature babies, laying lifeless in their incubators, frail and alone, after Israel forced everyone to evacuate the hospital and killed anyone who remained to care for them. We will never forget the massacre at Al-Shifa, once a hospital, now a slaughterhouse, with no patients spared, no hospital protected, and no civilians sheltered from the depths of Israel's brutalities. We will never forget the mass graves at Nasser Hospital. Hundreds of innocent, defenseless patients executed in the place that was supposed to keep them safe. Their bodies unrecognizable with torture and mutilation. We will never forget the father amputating his daughter's leg with a kitchen knife upon the kitchen table. The injured besieged in their homes with no route to escape. We will never forget the innocent man laying in a river of blood and flour, having awaited the aid he hoped would heal his starvation, unaware that the bullets would reach him first. We will never forget the pain in the eyes of a Palestinian grandfather, desperately holding on to his beloved grandchild he called the soul of his soul, now dead, in his arms. We will never forget the terrified cries of 6-year-old Hind Rajab, pleading for her life while trapped alone in a car with the bodies of her dead relatives as she awaited her turn. And we will never forget the rest of the world who let this continue. The world leaders who provided Israel with the weapons to be used against the defenseless population, the media that convinced us that somehow Palestinians deserve to die, and the rest of the public who looked no further, lest it disturb their privileged lives, as if the slaughter of our people was not worth just a second of their time. I often hear people say, well, what's this got to do with us? But the truth is that this is not just a Palestinian issue, an Arab issue, or a Muslim issue. This is an issue of humanity that begs a response from every single human being on earth. An issue that threatens the futures of each and every one of us. What kind of world are we creating if we can sit back as a genocide unfolds live on our screens, then switch off the telly and continue living our lives as if the horror movie ended when we pressed the red button? What kind of world are we creating if we can watch as mosques and churches, schools and shelters, hospitals, ambulances are bombed before our eyes and not one of us in the world can do anything about it? What kind of world are we creating if one country has the power to collectively starve an entire population, cutting off their food supply and blocking their aid trucks, their only hope and lifeline? In 2024, we are breaking new records every day. And not the kind of record to celebrate, but the kind of record that should force us to hang our heads in shame. Like the record for the deadliest war on children, with more children killed in just 6 months of war in Gaza than in the last 4 years of global conflicts combined. Or the record for the highest levels of hunger and starvation anywhere at any time, with 100% of the Gazan population experiencing hunger crisis. Or the record for one of the most intense civilian punishment campaigns ever recorded in our history, with a higher daily average death toll in Gaza than in any other armed conflict of recent times. We cannot allow these harrowing statistics to become the new norm as we become desensitized to the horrors of a dystopian reality that should forever shock us to the core. Israel has violated every single law in the rulebook and exposed international law for the myth that it is. A system held hostage to power dynamics that can offer little more than false hope and empty promises to the oppressed. The truth is that if we can allow this, we can allow anything. And who is not to say that next time it won't be our relatives, our children, and our lives on the line? Palestinians are not some other species deserving of death and torture, but an innocent people just like you and I, who love their families, value education, and cherish the sanctity of life. In history class, we are taught of past wars and reminded of the worst that mankind can be capable of. But education is more than simply remembering facts. As Chomsky once put it, education is not just memorizing that Hitler killed 6 million Jews. Education is understanding how millions of ordinary Germans were convinced that it was required. Education is learning how to spot the signs of history repeating itself. And today those signs are crystal clear. War crimes are broadcasted live for all to see, while the media convinces us that genocide is self-defense and innocent civilians are barbaric animals. But we now know the devastating implications that censorship, dehumanization, and propaganda can have, so we mustn't allow it to fool us again. We must do our own research, learn the history, understand the context, and unravel the truth. We must use our voices, the strongest weapon that we have, to challenge the disinformation and inform the unaware. We must do everything in our power to stop history from repeating itself again. And every time they try to silence our voices, we must shout even louder as if our lives depend on it, because theirs do.
Our theme today is Stop Arming Israel. You'll be pleased to hear that the UK has got clear rules for stopping innocent deaths arising from our arms exports. These state that a licence for arms export cannot be granted or should be revoked if there is a clear risk that the items might be used to commit or facilitate a serious violation of international humanitarian law. If there is one place that international law is being violated, it is Gaza today. International law states that in war, civilian casualties must be avoided as far as possible. More than 13,000 children have been murdered in Gaza by the Israeli military. Back in February, a group of UN experts produced evidence that the Israeli military were targeting non-combatant Palestinians, including children, as they sought shelter. Doctors have reported treating a significant number of children, elderly people, and others who were clearly not combatants with single bullet wounds to the head or chest, pointing to deliberate targeting of civilians. In its genocide ruling, the International Court of Justice required that Israel take all necessary and effective measures to facilitate the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza. What is actually happening? On the 2nd of April, 7 World Central Kitchen aid workers, including UK citizens, were killed in targeted airstrikes. This attack on an agency distributing food to a population facing famine is part of a broader Israeli war crime, as acknowledged by the EU's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, of intentionally using starvation as a weapon of war. According to the Campaign Against the Arms Trade, since 2008, the UK has licensed the export of arms worth over £560 million to Israel. In truth, we don't know the full extent of this trade, as many of the licenses are open, with no requirements to monitor their value. We do know that 15% of the parts for F-35 bombers used by Israel in the ongoing slaughter in Gaza are made in Kent. The government's stance on arms sales is in tatters. Alicia Kearns, the Tory chair of the Common Select Committee on Foreign Affairs, has stated that legal advice that the government has received from its own lawyers states that Israel has breached international humanitarian law in Gaza. Incredibly, the government continues to refuse to make this advice public. It's true that UK arms exports to Israel are dwarfed by American and other countries. But stopping them would still send a strong international message that we refuse to be complicit to the ongoing slaughter in Gaza. If you don't want to be complicit, just point your phone at this QR code and sign the petition to write to Dave Cameron to say, stop arming Israel. Thank you very much. We're now going to go off on our short march.
round of applause for yourselves, please. It's fantastic. Although we don't, as I said, we don't have the kind of numbers that they get in Bristol, certainly not in London, but I think we've made a huge impact. Well done. So we're going to have, to finish up, we're going to have 3 more speeches. First of all, Lara. Lara is Palestinian heritage from living in Jordan. You're a student, Bath University. So I think we might need to... Are you sure? Okay. All right, I'm handing over to Lara. Thank you, Lara.
Hi everyone, and thank you so much for being here today. What I'd like to share is something more personal. So my name is Lara. I was born and raised in Jordan, but both my parents were from Palestine. My dad is from Hebron. He was 3 years old when him and his family evacuated from Palestine to Jordanian refugee camps. My mom and her sisters were all born in refugee camps in Jordan, in Al-Karama refugee camp. And they both moved to Amman, and I was born and raised in Amman, and I've never seen anything else but Jordan, but I've always known that I have another home, and that home is Palestine. There are lots of symbolism when it comes to Palestinians, the symbolism of the key. The key is essential. Why? Because both my grandparents, from my mom's side and my dad's side, when they left their homes back in 1948, they both locked their homes and held that key. And they brought that key with them to refugee camps in Jordan. They took it with them back to Amman. Until now, I still have that key to my home in Haifa, to my home in Hebron, that home that is no longer there, that's been destroyed, that's been bombed. Settlements have been built over it, over the blood of the people who've been living there for years and years. And that's only one part of the Palestinian history. We also have the other parts of us not being able to use our flag and having to reside to a watermelon that represents the color of the Palestinian flag, an essential right that we all should be having. And last but not least, let's not forget that from 1948 and 1967, 1.9 million people who've been living there for ages have been evacuated from their homes. And right now, there are 9 million Palestinians living in exiles, while at the same time, there is something called the right of return. Any person who is this Jewish can go back to live there, and 9 million people are living in exile who are stateless. And this didn't stop there. Now we've been seeing atrocities in Gaza. Right now it might be April here, it might be cold, but currently there's a heat wave in Gaza, and people are living in tents under the sun in a desert. Their homes have been destroyed. Every single hospital in Gaza has been destroyed. Every single university, school has been destroyed. It's the first time in 50 years that children are not able to go to their schools because of the ongoing genocide, ethnic cleansing, and all the atrocities that have been going in Gaza for the past 6 months. Half a year of killing, bombing, using phosphorus, which is a war crime, killing hospitals, killing children, killing their families, torturing them. Collective punishment is a war crime, and it's been going on for 6 full months. It all started in 1948, if not earlier, and it's going on till today. And all of this is a testimony that all of this can be going on in the world, and all of us can be protesting, and nothing can be happening. But we will not stop, and I hope that we will continue to fight and remember all the Palestinians everywhere around the world. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Lara. That was very moving. I don't normally speak, but I'm going to do so today. And after me, we're having our final speaker, who is Matthew Alford, who teaches at the University of Bath and is a filmmaker and has done a lot of research, which I hope he'll mention in his speech. It'll be fascinating. So first of all, I want to pay tribute to the courage of students and staff at American universities who have ignited a forest fire of mass protest that has now hopped across the Atlantic to European soil. I don't know how many here have seen the CNN video from the moment an Emory University economics professor came across the violent arrest of a protester on campus and asked the police with shock, "What are you doing?" That's all that prompted an officer to hurl her to the ground and handcuff her, despite her telling them repeatedly that she is a professor. Though we are truly in frightening times, their bravery gives us renewed hope in the future of humanity. I would also like to pay tribute to the hundreds of thousands of anti-Zionist Jews protesting in so many countries across the globe. I am going to read from Naomi Klein's recent speech, "We Need an Exodus from Zionism." Naomi Klein is a Jewish Canadian author, social activist and filmmaker known for her political analysis, support of ecofeminism, organised labour and leftism, and criticism of corporate globalisation, fascism, eco-fascism and capitalism. She delivered the speech last Wednesday at the emergency Seder in the streets in New York City. The Seder is a traditional Passover meal that includes reading, drinking 4 cups of wine, telling stories, eating special foods, singing, and other Passover traditions. And this is what she said. It is cut down. "This Passover, we don't need or want the false idol of Zionism. We want freedom from the project that commits genocide in our name. I've been thinking about Moses and his rage when he came down from the mount to find the Israelites worshipping a golden calf. False idols. The human tendency to worship the profane and shiny, to look at the small and material rather than the large and transcendent. What I want to say to you tonight at this revolutionary and historic Seder in the streets is that too many of our people are worshipping a false idol once again. They are enraptured by it, drunk on it, profaned by it. That false idol is called Zionism. It is a false idol that takes our most profound biblical stories of justice and emancipation from slavery, the story of Passover itself, and turns them into brutalist weapons of colonial land theft, roadmaps for ethnic cleansing and genocide. It is a false idol that has taken the transcendent idea of the promised land, a metaphor for human liberation that has travelled across multiple faiths to every corner of this globe and dared to turn it into a deed of sale for a militaristic ethno-state. From the start, Zionism required the mass expulsion of Palestinians from their homes and ancestral lands in the Nakba. From the start, it has been at war with dreams of liberation. From the start, it has produced an ugly kind of freedom that saw Palestinian children not as human beings, but as demographic threats, much as the Pharaoh in the book of Exodus feared the growing population of Israelites and thus ordered the death of their sons. Zionism has brought us to our present moment of cataclysm, and it's time that we said clearly, it has always been leading us here. It is a false idol that has led far too many of our own people down a deeply immoral path that now has them justifying the shredding of core commandments. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet. We, in these streets for months and months, are the exodus from Zionism. It is a false idol that equates Jewish freedom with cluster bombs that kill and maim Palestinian children. Zionism is a false idol that has betrayed every Jewish value, including the place on questioning a practice, including the place of children questioning a practice embedded in the Seder with its 4 questions asked by the young children, including the love we have as a people for text and education. Today, this false idol justifies the bombing of every university in Gaza, the destruction of countless schools, of archives, of printing presses, the killing of hundreds of academics, of journalists, of poets. This is what Palestinians call scholasticide, the killing of the means of education. Meanwhile, in this city, the universities call the NYPD and barricade themselves against the grave threat posed by their own students, daring to ask them basic questions such as, how can you claim to believe in anything at all? Least of all us, while you enable, invest in, and collaborate with this genocide. The false idol of Zionism has been allowed to grow unchecked for far too long. So tonight we say it ends here. We don't need or want the false idol of Zionism. We want freedom from the project that commits genocide in our name. Freedom from an ideology that has no plan for peace, other than deals with murderous, theocratic petro-states next door, while selling the technologies of robo-assassinations to the world. We seek to liberate Judaism from an ethno-state that wants Jews to be perennially afraid, that wants our children to be afraid, that wants us to believe the world is against us, so that we go running to its fortress and beneath its iron dome, or at least keep the weapons and donations flowing. That is the false idol. What are we? We are in these streets for months and months. We are the exodus from Zionism. And to the Chuck Schumers of this world, we do not say, let our people go. We say, we have already gone. And your kids, they're with us now. And finally, I want to welcome Matthew Alford.
I'm Matthew Alford. I teach at the university. I was just asked to introduce myself. Hello, everybody. So it can feel, I think, a bit like Groundhog Day, continuing to protest for such a long period of time, coming out week after week. And that can be a frustrating experience, I think, for all of us, right? However, what I wanted to talk to you about today was, there was a Greek philosopher who said that there's only one constant in life. Do you know what that constant is? Change. Thank you very much. Well done, yes. The only constant in life is change, and things are actually changing right now. We may not see it, we may not recognize it, but change is happening right now. A week ago, for good and for ill, Iran launched an attack on Israel. killing nobody. Effectively, what Iran did there was send up a $1 billion firework display and then hand Israel the bill. This has re-established deterrence in the Middle East, at least between the states. It showed that even the psychopathic Netanyahu is unable to respond to everything in the way that he wants. And he has had to delay, as a result, his assault on Rafah. Every life that Israel takes damages their soft power. It damages their moral authority, and it makes them more enemies. One life taken by imperialism is one life too many. But the tide is turning. Russia, China, and Iran are more cautious, relatively to the United States and Britain, are more cautious and responsible powers, and they are reshaping everything. As I said, for good and for ill. In Britain, we are so used to complaining about the Tories, the Tories, the Tories. But I tell you, friends, I tell you now, in a few months' time, that is going to be an anachronism, because they're about to get wiped out in an election. That stain on our country will become an irrelevance when they get 100-odd seats. But then, of course, instead of old Richie Sunak, we are going to be left with a very different set of problems in the form of the Labour Party led by Sir Keir Starmer. Oh, I misread that. Sir Keir Starmer. There's always one. But a shrinking minority, I believe, as well. The anti-war movement plays its part, and that's us. The anti-war movement plays its part. We cannot solve everything. We cannot solve everything, but we do have an effect. In 2003, we marched, and they say it didn't stop the war. Well, maybe not, but it probably stopped missile strikes on Iran in 2008 when the American administration was thinking about it. And I know that we stopped US-UK strikes on Syria in 2013. What did that take? Just a few thousand people writing to their MPs and their congresspersons, and it led to Barack Obama and David Cameron humiliatingly having to come out in public and declare that their planned strikes were off. In 1975, we had an ally, US and UK had an ally, Indonesia, which was committing genocide in East Timor. There wasn't even a street movement for the East Timorese. And there wasn't even any news coverage, but a tiny group of activists and academics got together, and it took years, included Noam Chomsky from the United States, and it caused, eventually, the United States to cut support and to end the invasion. We didn't win in 2003 with the Iraq anti-war campaign, but that's because you can't just turn out for a day and expect that it's going to fix everything. Pressure has to be sustained, which is exactly what we are doing. Change is often gradual, but it can suddenly come in quick waves and quick bursts. That's why when people say that the problem of Israel is bigger than Netanyahu, I say, yeah, but at least he is at the root. Let's make sure that we get rid of him, as everybody, even people with wildly different views on this topic, all want. And then we can see what little chinks of light are opened up for further progress. Over the years, I've learned that anti-war protesters are committed, joyful, and right. Even at a local protest like this, we are playing our part. Friends, we are not just going through the motions when we are here. We are not just going through the motions. Ours is not a hopeless cause. Israel is the one with the hopeless cause of death and pointless mayhem. We are joyful, and I'm proud to be joyful with you all. Many of the powers that be know that they are about to be the powers that were. That's why they're banning TikTok. That's why Netanyahu is ranting about campus protests. That's why Suella Braverman calls this a hate march. Does this feel like a hate march? Change is the only constant in life. The villains of this world, some of them at least, are about to lose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for coming and staying the course. And please come back on May the 11th and come back with friend or family, and let's see if we can double the number next time. As I say, although we're small in number, we have made a massive impact, you can tell from the expression on people's faces as we walk past. Right, I'm going to hand over to Jahina.
Hi, everyone. Don't worry, I'm not about to give a speech. You're free now. But I do want to ask one more thing of you, please. Like we've ended the past few marches, can we once again bring all of the signs with the faces of Hind Rajab, of the Palestinian children, of Reem, and put them with their faces up, please, right in front of me here in this empty area, to form what we've come to call our shrine at the end of every protest. A reminder of what we've come here to fight for, and something to look at and to remind you why we need to keep showing up. You know, it's for these faces and for the countless others that we'll never see. And I always mention the ones that we'll never see because it's so important for me when I feel overwhelmed or hopeless to remember that it's not just Reem that I'm fighting for, or Hind, and that can be done now, right? There's so many more like them that have already died, and that unfortunately, not unfortunately, that makes it sound like some kind of inevitable tragedy, that are going to be purposely killed in these coming hours, days, weeks, if we don't stop it. And it's only we who can stop it. No one else from the above is coming for us. We're the ones who need to force them to stop it. So please, as you're doing, yes, continue to put those down. And a big thank you to the speakers today for giving me new stories to think about, for giving me inspiration to continue coming out here, as I'm sure they have for all of you as well. And thank you again for coming out and for making a difference, because I know that some people that we have passed at the march today are going to go home and are going to Google what's happening, and they're going to be with us next time. So thank you so much for coming out, and Free Palestine!